The first thing I learned about the world of Aralis was that nothing there was built for human eyes. The ceilings of the skydocks curved like the inside of a shell, translucent and faintly alive, pulsing with slow waves of color that responded to movement and sound. The air carried a metallic sweetness that coated my tongue, and gravity, though nominally Earth standard, felt slightly delayed, as if the planet waited a heartbeat before deciding whether to pull you down. I had been sent as a linguistic and cultural observer, not a diplomat, not a soldier. My job was simple in theory: listen, learn, and report. The Aralan Empire had allowed one human presence on their capital moon as a gesture of curiosity, not trust. I was tolerated, studied, and politely ignored. Except, as I would soon learn, by the princess. Princess Salith Virnai was spoken of in fragments, never directly, never casually. Among the courtiers, her name carried weight, like a note too deep to be heard but strong enough to rattle bone. Among the scholars, she was a biological anomaly. Among the soldiers, a symbol. Among me, at first, she was nothing more than a distant silhouette. I saw her only once during my first month, a procession crossing the upper bridge of the crystal atrium. She moved with measured grace, her form tall and elongated, her skin patterned with faint, living geometries that shifted as she walked. The Aralans were not humanoid in the way Holovids liked to imagine. Their bodies were sculpted by evolution under different suns, elegant, powerful, unmistakably alien. And yet, there was something undeniably intentional about her presence. I did what I always did when faced with something overwhelming. I analyzed. Later that evening, in the privacy of my assigned quarters, I recorded my observations into the translation console. The device was always listening, always learning. It was also, I believed, isolated, secure. I was wrong. Aralan royal morphology exhibits adaptive biolatus structures, I said aloud, speaking slowly for the recorder. Princess Salith's form suggests ceremonial reinforcement along the thoracic and spinal ridges. Not ornamental. Functional. Possibly symbolic of. I hesitated, choosing my words carefully. Strength, lineage, and resilience. Her body is not designed for display. It is designed for survival. I leaned back, rubbing my eyes. If humans understood that, maybe we'd stop projecting our own fragilities onto alien forms. I didn't know that the console's light had shifted, barely perceptibly, from blue to violet. I didn't know that the princess had been standing beyond the thin wall of refractive crystal, her auditory filaments tuned not to sound, but to intent. And I certainly didn't know she was listening to every word. The summons came 3 days later. A soft chime echoed through my quarters, followed by a phrase in near-perfect English. Observer Elias Monroe. You are requested. Requested was Aralan for commanded politely. I was escorted through corridors I had never seen, descending rather than ascending, into the older parts of the palace moon. The architecture changed subtly, less luminous, more solid, as if these halls remembered a time before humans existed as a concept. The chamber I was brought into was circular and bare, except for a single raised platform at its center. She stood there. Up close, Princess Salith was overwhelming. Her height alone would have been imposing, but it was the presence, an almost gravitational pull, that made it difficult to breathe. Her skin's living patterns glowed softly, responding to my proximity like ripples on water. Her eyes, if that was the correct term, were multifaceted, deep, and unnervingly focused. You spoke of my body, she said. Her voice was not loud, but it resonated in my chest, bypassing my ears entirely. I swallowed. I spoke academically. Privately. There is no private when one studies a princess, she replied calmly. especially when one speaks truth. That stopped me. I did not summon you for apology, she continued. I summoned you for clarification. She stepped closer. The air shifted. You said my form was designed for survival. Explain. I took a breath, grounding myself in analysis. Among humans, bodies, especially those of leaders, are often reduced to symbols of beauty or dominance. But Airline physiology tells a different story. Your body adapts. It records lineage stressors. It carries history in its structure. Her patterns brightened. You saw that, she said softly. Not a question. Yes, I answered. And I believe most outsiders don't. Silence stretched between us, not empty, but charged. You spoke without knowing I listened, she said. Thus, your words were unguarded. Her gaze sharpened. That makes them valuable. From that moment on, my role changed. I was no longer merely an observer. I became a conversation. Salith began requesting my presence regularly, not in grand halls, but in quieter spaces, archive chambers, observation terraces, the deep biogardens where ancient Airline organisms pulsed like living stars. We spoke of everything. She asked about human bodies, why we feared age, why we reshaped ourselves to fit ideals that shifted every generation. I asked about Airline rites of transformation, about how their bodies changed in response to responsibility. When I became heir, she told me once, my lattice thickened. It was painful, necessary. You carry leadership physically, I said. Yes. And you carry it invisibly, she replied. Your minds bear the burden your bodies refuse. Over time, I realized something unsettling. She wasn't merely curious about humanity. She was curious about herself through me. One night, standing beneath the slow-turning sky of Aralis, she said, Among my people, my body is revered. Among outsiders, it is exoticized. Among you, it was understood. I met her gaze. Understanding doesn't require desire. Her patterns shifted, softer now. But it does not forbid it. The words hung between us, not as invitation, but as acknowledgement. There was no touch, no crossing of lines, just recognition. The political backlash came swiftly. Whispers turned into accusations. A human too close to the princess was a liability, an influence, a weakness. I was summoned by the High Conclave and informed my observation period would be concluded early. Exile, dressed as courtesy. Salith said nothing when I told her. She listened, still as stone. Your people fear contamination, she said finally. Mine fear deviation. I never meant to cause. You caused change, she interrupted. That is never neutral. On the day of my departure, the skydocks were quiet. No procession. No ceremony. I thought that would be the end. I was wrong. As my transport prepared to disengage, the comm panel flared to life. Princess Salith appeared, not in regal form, but unadorned, her patterns dimmer, more personal. You spoke of my body as history, she said. I will speak of yours as catalyst. She placed a hand against her chest, over the living lattice. I am to ascend the throne. When I do, Aralis will open limited exchange, not of trade, but of knowledge. Because one human reminded me that understanding is not surrender. My throat tightened. That's unprecedented. So was you, she replied. The channel began to close. One more thing, she said. Yes. When you spoke, believing yourself unheard, you gave me something rare. What was that? She smiled, an Airline expression, subtle but unmistakable. To be seen without being claimed. The transmission ended. As the stars stretched into lines and Aralis faded behind me, I realized the truth. I had not been sent to study an alien empire. I had been sent to be overheard. And somewhere, on a living world beneath unfamiliar suns, an alien princess carried words, not about her body, but about her worth, into the future of her people.